This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Again, knew nothing about caregiving, but I knew my new role. It was like, it's not going to get back to the way it was. Let's just say that. And the sooner I realized that, I think the easier it was. So
caring for aging parents or other loved ones while working, raising children, and trying to live your own life? Wondering how to find the time for your personal health and happiness? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast, the show where real family caregivers share how to be happy and healthy while caring for others. Now, here's your host, family caregiver and certified caregiving consultant, Elizabeth Miller.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast, which is part of the Whole Care Network and UK Health Radio. If this is your first time listening, welcome. This is a show produced bi-weekly to help family caregivers integrate self-care and caregiving into their lives. Each of our episodes has an accompanied show notes page, so if you want the details about the topics, the products, and resources we speak about, or just to see the related photos, you'll find the show notes by going on the website happyhealthycaregiver.com, and underneath the podcast menu, click the image or number for today's show. The link is also going to be in your podcast episode's description. Do you know about WCN University yet? It's a digital course library for family caregivers. My first course is available called The 6 Steps to Infusing Self-Care in Your Caregiving Life. There are also a ton of other courses and a variety of other topics. Search and select for what's going to be most helpful to you in this moment. Learn more at wcnuniversity.com. For today's segment of what I'm listening to a novel called Thank You for Listening by Julia Whelan. I'm about a third of the way through it, and it's a fun and uplifting listen so far. It's about an audiobook narrator who doesn't take the romance genre narration jobs, and she thinks really less of them until she finds herself living out her own romance story and in a bit of a predicament. The chemistry, the romance is great. There's also a caregiving subplot where her blah blah, that's the name for her grandma, is in a memory care community, and it's getting tough to pay for memory care. And the main character's dad is really not a ton of help. There's also a bit of a mystery as the main character wears an eye patch, and I haven't yet discovered what that's all about. Interestingly, the author, Julia Whelan, is a well-respected audiobook narrator. So of course she narrates her own book. In fact, she's such a great narrator that I have sought out other books that she has narrated. That's probably how I found this one, because she does such a fantastic job with multiple voices. So I'll link to the book if you want to check it out. My favorite thing for this episode is the Nestle Nespresso Aerosino. You don't have to have a Nespresso coffee machine to enjoy all the benefits of the Aerosino. The Aerosino is a standalone milk frother, and the great thing about it is that it will froth your milk, or in my case, oat milk, and it will either heat it up or cool it down. Now, obviously, the type of milk you use is going to be, some are frothier than others. I have to use oat milk for the different food rules that I'm trying to follow to help me with my gastrointestinal health. And I'm using version 3. They now have a version 4 of this Nespresso Aerosino, but it's like $25 or so more expensive. And I think it pretty much does the same thing, but it has a little bit of a different look and a handle. I feel like my own little coffee shop barista when I make my coffee in the morning. It's become a ritual that makes me feel special. and feels like I'm treating myself, I have the Arrowcino on my special little coffee bar, and depending on my mood of the day, I will add into my coffee, along with my frothed oat milk, stevia, cinnamon, vanilla, and sometimes even these organic cacao wafers if I'm in like a mocha mood. So I'm going to link to the frother, the Nespresso frother, the Arrowcino, and the chocolate wafers in the show notes, so you can check them out and create your own special coffee bar in your home. Before we get into today's Caregiver Spotlight episode, I want to first shine the light on our episode sponsor, Dr. PND.
Caregiving can be demanding, oftentimes leaving you feeling so empty. Prioritizing your health means becoming an even stronger caregiver for those that you love. At drpnd.com, we have something for everyone to help you reclaim your health, including deep functional tests to get to the root cause, healing nutritional and supplemental protocols to boost your energy and vitality, and so much more. If you're ready to reclaim your health and get back to even stronger caregiving, visit drpnd.com. That's drpnd.com.
In this Caregiving Spotlight episode, we are shining the light on family caregiver Matthew Cauli. Matthew became a full-time caregiver to his wife, Cauli, after she experienced 2 massive strokes and an ovarian cancer diagnosis. Matthew and his wife are in their 30s and raising their 6-year-old son, Ty. In this episode, Matthew displays his dedication to keeping his family physically, emotionally, and financially afloat. We chatted about how his family's life was turned upside down and how he found therapy through social media channels, why he could no longer keep working while caregiving, and how the caregiving community has shown up for him in ways he didn't anticipate. Enjoy the show. Hello, Matthew. Welcome to the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast.
Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm excited to chat with you. We always kick off the show, though, before we dive into your story, which I'm a journalist by nature. I studied journalism in college, so I've always got some questions to kind of get us talking here, and then we'll see where the conversation goes. But first, we pick out some, hopefully some inspiration for that someone might need to hear today. But it says, happiness is an attitude. We either make ourselves miserable or happy and strong. The amount of work is the same. So that's, I don't know who Francesca Riegler is, but essentially says happiness is an attitude. We make ourselves miserable or happy and strong. The amount of work is the same. What are some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love it. I couldn't agree. Yeah, you either have 2 ways you can go in a situation. You can either, be down and or just, try to spearhead it, and embrace the toughness, grow from it, and fight through it, and in the same time helping others out while doing it. So
yeah,
I agree with that quote. It's great.
Was there ever a point, like for me, I know in my caregiving story, even in my initial writings, like I kind of felt like I was deviating from like who I was in my core. Like I just was I'd cry easily. I'd look in the mirror and I'd be like, who are you? Like, this is not who you are. And it was kind of an intentional choice that I made, that thought like, I'm going to roll my sleeves up and I'm going to figure out this stuff and, and hopefully help others at the same time, like you said. But spearheading, I think, is a good verb that you used.
Yeah, that's what it is.
It's what it is. Well, let's dive into your caregiving story, Matthew. Like, tell us a little bit about it. Like, how did this guy from Westchester, New York, married with his son, all of a sudden find himself like, I'm a family caregiver? What happened?
Which I knew nothing about, by the way, previously. I always thought it was something that you take care of with old people, right? That's always what it was. So anyway, with that, I met Cauli back in 2009 online, back when online dating like first came out, back when it was a little simpler, I guess. But there's still some stories back back then as well that are funny. But we met online. Our first date was in New York. It took about a year for me to say she's the one. She has to be my wife. So proposed a year later. We moved out of the city. Slowly made our way up to Westchester, where we bought a house, a fixer-upper, I'll say 8 years ago. It was quite a fixer-upper, and Cauli and I just worked really hard towards fixing it up year by year by year to start our family. And I probably skipped over it, but yeah, we got married in 2010, and then we started our family in 2017, where we had our son. And the house came along great. Cauli was my partner in crime. She helped me with everything. She was on the roof with me doing the tiles, which is like crazy.
Dang.
But she was Mrs.
That doesn't surprise me, though, really. Like, now I see her working so hard to get healthier, so it doesn't really surprise me. Yeah.
Yeah, she just had that attitude, that can-do attitude, right? So, okay, so we had our son in 2017, and sorry, there's so much to my story that I just get sidetracked.
The ovarian cancer, I think, right?
Right.
That diagnosis?
So we had our son in 2020, height of COVID. Here we go. Height of COVID. Okay. She stopped working. She was a nanny for a family of 3 for years, and she stopped working in January. COVID hits. She wanted to focus on our son, obviously, more, as was the perfect time, right? Perfect age. And then fast forward to May 15th, 2020, the day it happened, the day that will live in infamy, right? She had a massive stroke in front of us that day. It was a normal day. I remember the things that happened that day, the sense, the smell, what she was wearing. Sorry, emotional time.
No,
it's funny, the details of that day.
What do you remember smelling? I'm just like,
oh my God, just fresh air. It's very cloudy. We were on the trampoline with my son earlier that day. So it's just a normal day. Hopefully you can edit some of this out. I don't know.
I don't want to edit it if you don't want to edit it, because I think it shows that you're like a really real person. So
yeah, it's just
and here's the thing, like, Matthew, you have been through trauma. Like, it's traumatic what you have experienced, you and Cauli and your son, from whatever he can remember. I don't know if he remembers that day. So but I think that we are all kind of going with you kind of in that moment, that there. So it's like in an instant, life changed for you.
Boom. And I listened to one of your podcasts recently, and it's so true. It's like I feel like I died that day. Like, we both died that day. I mean, part of us died, I should say, right? Not fully. And we touched upon it earlier, but after this trauma, I feel like a different person, totally. And we both feel like different people. But regardless, we're both the parents we need to be for our son, regardless of, and we both put that first. So,
how old is he now?
He's 6 now. 6 now.
Okay,
and at the time, he was 3.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So she had a massive stroke in front of y'all, and I'm sure hospitalizations, treatments, like, you're learning your whole new vocabulary of things that you
oh my goodness,
want to know, frankly.
Things that I'm not supposed to know, I guess. Just kidding. On the phone with 911, she was in a very awkward position on the couch. I remember looking back, offering her some food. She said no, and the next thing I feel is a Hot Wheels car hit my shoulder, and I look back, and she's in an awkward position. And that Hot Wheels card was her telling me, like, help, something's going on. Obviously, I look at her and go, oh my God, yeah, something's off. 911, EMTs come, my son. Who knows what he was processing at the time. But I was on the phone with EMT. They took her to the hospital. I called my parents so that they can come watch Ty. I went to the hospital right after. They gave her something called TBA, which is a clot busting agent. Unfortunately, it did not work. They did get her in there in that 4-hour time span, but unfortunately, it did not work.
That's like a critical time for this drug to do
it's
something.
a 4-hour, from what I learned through the process, it's a 4-hour
You're teaching me. I don't know either. Yeah.
time.
So,
Yeah. That 4-hour gap is your best odds to just clear the stroke up, and then it's just a recovery from there. So that didn't work. They flew somebody up, I guess, from New York. I don't know where, but they did a surgery where they go up an artery in the leg all the way up into the brain. Crazy, right? To unclot it. And they did that. It was successful. She was on her way to recovery, and then 2 days later, another just randomly massive stroke happened on the hold on, I gotta get this right because I got it wrong one time, and on the right side of her brain.
okay.
So it's kind of like, it's funny how it works. So the right side of your brain is kind of in control of your left. That makes sense. So big chunk, I guess you could say, died off, or it just turns into scar tissue. All those connections, hard wires are gone, right? And so with that, pretty much paralyzed on the left side. Couldn't eat solid foods because couldn't really talk. The vocal cord, everything on your left, sight, hearing, is gone. And at the time, the stroke. Is it okay that I'm going into such detail? Or
yeah, I mean, I think it kind of I think it shows that you have a how much was deteriorating and how much of her the things that she needed to do every day, because this led to you having to help her do these things every day when she came home from the hospital. Let's fast forward. So when did the ovarian cancer kind of get diagnosed?
So yeah, at the hospital, the doctors thought it was COVID because they're like, what? Why is this 35-year-old healthy, beautiful young mother having these strokes? Like, it was a real question mark. And long story short, is she complained about her abdomen one day. They took a scan. They saw a 10-centimeter mass in there. They couldn't operate or do anything at the time to test it because she was just in rough shape, right? So, so they really weren't gonna.
Because this was after the stroke.
This was after the second stroke. So
after the second
during
stroke.
that second stroke, the brain was swelling so much. They did a life-saving surgery where they removed the skull and let the brain swell out. Otherwise, the brain would just collapse your neck, and you go paralyzed, and it needed.
How terrifying! Yeah. Well, and so my question is like, because I know that she's getting great care because you are there for her and you're providing great care for Kinlea. Like, who's caring for you during this time when you're in the hospital and doing all those things? Like, who's helping educate you, train you, tell you what's going on? What are they doing for you?
Height of COVID, I had no one. I had the nurses and the doctors and the rehab team and the neurology team, and I had everybody's phone number on my phone, which is a great point that we need to get to. Is like, no one's going to take care of your loved one better than you. And I noticed that. I mean, as great as the nurses and doctors were, the staff was amazing. Still, like, I nobody will take the time than family.
Yeah.
So,
and you're the expert in her. Like, you know her preferences, what makes her comfortable,
exactly.
her favorite fabrics, her whatever. Like, is she hot or cold? Like, so were you able to see, were you allowed to see her during that time?
It was very hard to get in because obviously everyone's at the Pentagon to get in, right? But I wasn't taking no for an answer. Let's just say that. And I talked to the right people, and I was just, I think they saw my situation, with my young one, and was like, all right, this is gone. So gowned up with COVID patients left and right, and I don't know what's going on with that. I had to be with her. It's a stroke. She has no idea what's going on. She needs somebody on her side, right? So
yes.
Yeah.
So then at what point after all that did she come home from the hospital? And then what kind of training and support and resources did you have then?
Sure. Right. So to rewind and to your main point before was I was like a sponge in the hospital. I soaked everything up I could. I asked everybody the questions, watched the rehab team because, again, knew nothing about caregiving, but I knew my new role. It was like this. It's not going to get back to the way it was. Let's just say that. And the sooner I realized that, I think the easier it was. So that's when the learning started to begin and asking the questions. And again, my main focus has always been to get her back to as best she can as a mom and the person she's to be.
Yes.
So
Yes.
with that said, we came home and I just applied everything I learned. There was a rehab place around the corner that I was able to take her to, and
Okay.
financially and with my health insurance through my company, they really didn't offer a lot in terms of at-home care. So they had
Did they offer anything?
So they had a nurse come once a week for the first
Okay.
2 weeks to just
Okay.
take vitals. And also they had somebody come and give her a shower once a week for 3 weeks. And then they get exhausted and you're on your own at that point. And it's an awful feeling.
It's an awful feeling.
It went from social workers in the hospital to somewhat guiding you. They did the best that they could. But they're dealing with stuff all day long, so they can only give you so much attention, right? But yeah, pretty much when you're home and everything is exhausted, and like me, I didn't have the funds to continue at-home help. So, it's just like, all right, here we go. This is my new norm. And I took over from there. And fast forward to today, everything is so much better. She's amazing. My life as a caregiver is so much easier from the beginning. So as much as I get upset and complain, she's doing amazing. Like it's ridiculous how well she's doing.
Yeah. I mean, you can see it as those of us have, it's introduced to you through TikTok, I think. So watching the progression of, where you were and where you've come, it gives people hope, frankly, like not just for Kanlea, but also for you, Matthew, like watching your, journey from the, emotional outbursts and screams sometimes that you were feeling, which was totally, listen, like you've been through a whole grief scenario with what you have been through of grieving your old life, of grieving the life like you thought you and Kanlea were going to have in your future, of grieving how you thought you were going to be interacting as parents with your son, your job. Like, what did you do for a living?
So I was a graphic designer for a company, and I was in the graphic design field for about like 10 years. And so, oh my gosh.
And then recently, no, that's okay. I mean, like this is authentic. Like this is why we spotlight caregivers on the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast, because you are the expert in caregiving. I know you're still learning and I'm still learning every day, but like we're as close as we can get to the experts in caregiving. So I'd like to
said it on one of your other podcasts. The only way you could get, a master's in caregiving is someone. That's it, right?
And that's not my line. It's a friend's line that I'm just great. That's it. Like,
yeah, it's great.
It's nobody wants this master's, right? And you just, I love the name of your business, the Dedicated Caregiver, because you are like, you're committed and you're going to figure this shit out and you're going to do whatever it takes for yourself and your son and your wife. So, if
I get a lot of messages, and it's shocking about like just people who leave their significant other in times. And I didn't even cross my mind. And,
yes. I don't know if you listened to another episode that earlier this year was Joe Vasquez, who is another friend of TikTok. His wife had a traumatic brain injury. Now their marriage was kind of on a rocky road before all of that happened. I will say in hindsight, that was a blessing that you were in a good spot before that. But same kind of thing he said is like people expected him to leave, and it's like what, like, and yet. I don't know if they do that mostly because you're a guy. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, why would people say that?
That's tough because I really don't know the statistics. I know that on the full spectrum. I'm sure guys are on the low end of being caregivers. It's not easy. It's not easy, especially for a guy, right? There's a lot of things guys need, intimacy, and a lot of that goes, not intimacy, but like how do I say this? The 50-50, like just
Like
touching.
sharing. Yeah.
What's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, just
Affection. Yes. Like
affection. There you go. Perfect word.
yeah. Well, and depending
And
on your love language, right? Like if your
right.
touch is your love language, in my case, it's acts of service. So, if you want to show me love in my house, you're going to do the laundry and empty the dishwasher and all of that, which I know you're doing all of those things. So, but like
It's
we
never
know,
ending. It's never ending.
you'll never be bored. And like, and trying to kind of find the humor in that a little bit can be healing. But there is, I think it's great that you're in this space as a guy. You're a young guy with a young family who had a budding career, going for them. And you're very vocal and out there as far as like the impacts that this has had for you. And I think like, I'm glad, frankly, that caregivers are like fed up and we're just going to start talking about this stuff, because the more we talk about it and normalize it, hopefully, and the faces that kind of go along with these stories, then we can really impact the change of that. So let's talk about the stories part of it, like social media. Like what are some of the pros and cons of like putting your story out there on social media?
So this is very important. Okay. So I used TikTok as a tool. At the time, I knew nothing about TikTok. I mean, all I knew was it was a dancing app, right? That's all I heard of. And just one random day, she was getting chemo and just sitting there, and I was like, let me just open up the app and check it out. And made one video. I forget my first video, but I was just reaching out to see if there was anybody out there that can just relate. And
you were isolated. Like what?
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yes.
Just because I've never heard of such a story before, and it seemed like the doctors and nurses didn't either. But as I got the story out there, I just got more and more feedback from other people's story, and it to be honest, in a weird, selfish way, felt good. Right,
Yeah.
hearing other people like, okay, I'm not alone. I'm not, there's other people going through some.
Some people have it worse. Some people have it
shit out there, right?
Yes. Listen, there's 53 million plus. I really think that number is very low. Like there's so many that are doing, and there are different levels of it. And you are heavy into it day in, day out, like being the person that's showing up. Okay. So you found that you weren't alone, that you've getting some people to relate, and that feels comforting.
One video where I was like, okay, you know what? Screw it. Like, I don't care if it's embarrassing. I need people to hear me just scream. Like, this is ridiculous, the amount that is on my shoulders right now. So I made that one video of me screaming in the car, and changed our life. We have 1.3 million followers on TikTok, always rooting us on. I mean, we see people in the mall and they're like, hey, I know you from TikTok. And I feel amazing when people come up to us and say, wow, look how amazing she looks. Because, I mean, a lot of people can attest to this, but like, there is no way I thought we would make it this far in the beginning.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and when
not.
they do that, Matthew, like that's you. They're coming up and saying she's doing amazing. Yes, she's doing some work, but you are her like number one supporter, showing up for her day in, day out, that dedicated caregiver, as you say. Like that's a reflection of your hard work and your input in that, frankly. So I hope that you see that way, that she's doing a lot to recover, but you're making it all happen as well, and really being advocating for her. And I can tell you that if she did not have you, she would not be in the situation of where you guys are today if she did not have you with her by her side.
I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. Thanks.
Why do you think the vulnerability part of it, like that authenticity and that vulnerability, like what were you hoping that would do when you posted that video? Like why was that important to you to kind of put that out there and show that side of caregiving?
Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that and I don't say this in a harsh way, but just need to open their eyes to see a lot of the unsung heroes out there, that deserve a little bit of credit,
Yes.
that scream was for all the other caregivers out there who are just going through it. Because let me tell you, I hear the stories. Oh, I hear them. That's why I always get so emotional talking about it, because I know how strong
Because
everybody is,
yeah,
just fighting for
you're,
their loved ones.
would you say you're an empath? I guess I don't know what I'm definitely that too. Like you just have to scratch the surface and like I'm already we're tearing up together. Like it's that's what we're doing here. So
I think right before the podcast, I was like warning Elizabeth,
yes.
I might lose, I might get emotional, and boom, right off the bat. So I apologize.
No apology. Like, and that's what I want to tell people out there is like, let's not apologize for being real and like being human, and that you've got to let that stuff out though, Matthew, too, because it's like it'll start revealing itself in other ways. Like if you don't cathartically release it in a healthy way, it shows up in unhealthy ways. Like this body is smart and it will catch up with us. So
well, can I talk to that? Oh, just a really important point on that, because I did want to mention it, but it's back to the TikTok. I used it as a therapy almost. I did go see a few therapists. It just wasn't my cup of tea, and it was very expensive. Let's just say that. And I used it as a therapy, just to talk to people, and everybody who did reach out to Cauli and myself. It was great to just have a little conversation, and it got to be a little overwhelming. I wish I could respond to everybody's comments, but it was it's just great to have a back and forth with other people who get it, right?
Yeah.
So again, therapist, not for me. I'm not saying it, don't do it. Who knows, maybe I just didn't meet the right one. But for me, TikTok, social media was a help and a therapy for me.
Yeah, emotional outlet. And I don't know, to your point, like the therapy, like I don't know if they were caregivers, if that would have made a difference, like if they had maybe, but to your point, it is also expensive. And if you were already struggling with the financial part of it and the work part of it, it was like another thing. So I'm glad you figured that out. I'm glad you figured out that social media could be in way therapy for you.
It is a tool.
Social self-care, essentially.
Right.
What you had shared with me that like organization is like crucial because you're like one guy holding all of this stuff together in your home and for your wife. So what are some of the organization tips you would have shared with, initial Matthew, or let's say somebody who's new to this role of caregiving? Like if you can kind of like get them up to where you are today and share something that would help them, what would that be?
Yeah, so organization is great. And I was the guy where my office desk was a nightmare, right? It was not organized at all. So fast forward to today, I'm still trying to organize my house. I had no idea. But Conlea has been helping me out recently with organization, so that's great. And so example, laundry, which I didn't know how to do laundry before all this. And it was a mess. I mean, towels with, socks with ties, his stuff. And then as she started to get her old self, little bits and pieces back, she was like, get 2 hampers, and it's like, that's a great idea. Let me do that.
Whites and colors. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm slowly, like, my eyes are opening to the world of just the house chores, and I have so much respect for all the house chores that need to be done around the house now. But the more organized you can be, the quicker you can get into the groove of your new norm, if that makes sense. Because you're going to have to deal with a lot of paperwork, a lot of schedules, appointments, and medications, and at least for the beginning, it is crazy. But I'm happy to say there's the caregiving world is slowly starting to grow, and I'm starting to see like apps come out that are going to be super helpful, right?
Yeah.
In terms
To
of
help
appointments and
coordinate
organization.
care, medication reminders, like listen,
Exactly.
anything that can help caregivers with peace of mind
Right.
and help them expand their care team, and technology can help do that. I say that technology is part of the care team because there are things that we can, like you said, getting all of our stuff in one place in a calendar. My husband and I had to have conversations about that when we were juggling care and kids and
Yeah.
work. It's a lot. And then dividing and conquering on the responsibilities, if you can, or talking to, other professionals that could potentially coach or help or do something. So there's a lot happening, I think, in the caregiving space that I think is encouraging. We've got a long way to go, and we need to catch up because we're outnumbered. The caregivers are outnumbered by all of the people that need care, and our health and happiness matters too. Our mental health it matters too. So you are certainly having an impact, I'm sure, on your son Ty. He's 6 years old now. He's watching dad like doing a lot of things that you didn't think dad was going to be doing. What do you think are some of his takeaways of that? Like, if you kind of put yourself in his shoes, like what do you hope for him to kind of take away from this experience?
Oh boy. Yeah, this to be fully transparent and honest, that this has been the most difficult part of this whole situation is my son and his well-being, right? So hopefully I'm doing everything right, but Cauli and I even had the conversation before this happened, like, God forbid something happens to one of us. What do we do? What's the game plan? And it was very easy. It was like, just put our child first. We didn't even know if we were gonna have a boy or girl at the time, but just put our child first, and that was that. It was pretty simple. So, so for me, that was it. That was the game plan, and for me, it was in order to take care of him, I needed his mom to get back, if that makes sense. So I couldn't put him I couldn't put him first at some points because I needed to focus on her. And at some points I had to step away from taking care of her and focus on him. And it was just an impossible juggling act that just, hopefully I did all the right things. But he's amazing. He's starting to pick up cues. He'll run to mommy with the brace and try to put it on. He watches me. He grew up really fast through this experience.
I have no doubt.
He's very independent, which is great. But I always say, like, he seems great on the outside. Hopefully everything's great under the hood. And I think he's a happy boy right now with his mom and dad. And I think everything's great. I think
he's little, and it is his childhood, and you're grieving the childhood that you wish that he had, and how the things that you thought you would be doing. And it seemed great on paper, your plan of like putting all the attention on him or your child, and then also, like, at that point, like even putting all the attention on Kanlea, because at some point, like, for me, the analogy, I don't know if you've heard this on one of my things before, but it's like the nest of hungry birds was the analogy that made the most sense to me as a caregiver. Like, I didn't really relate to the oxygen mask thing on an airplane. Like, I kind of got it, but it was really this bird nest thing that I just thought of one day. And I was like, oh yeah, all these things need me, all these, my work needs me, my kid needs me, my wife needs me, my house needs me, the bills need me, like everybody needs me. And they're never all satiated, right? Like, they're always going to be screaming and crying for more stuff. But I came to this realization, and I hope that you've come there too, is like, if we don't take some of the worm or the nourishment or the energy or whatever it is for ourselves, we will not be around or able to continue to feed into everybody else that needs us.
Right.
Did that did that realization come to you at some point, or has it come to you at some point where you know that in order for this to be a sustainable caregiving journey for you, you had to prioritize your own health and happiness?
Yeah, I think for me though, my happiness was like through my son. It's very weird to say, but I put my like everything that for me, I it was on the back burner, and he was my focus, and so was his mom at the time.
Yeah.
So I was just a vessel to get them where they needed to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Were there
Yeah.
things though that were like joyful for your son to do that also brought you joy, like doing them together, like to kind of have the normal dad experience of like, I don't know, going out and playing catch or going to a playground? Like maybe your self-care ish was kind of wrapped up in his kidness.
Pretty much. Yeah. Yes. You could say that. Yeah.
Interesting. It's
I
interesting.
always say that with somebody through trauma, at least for me, and they have a child involved. If you put them first and make them your focus, it kind of like, I don't know if that's the healthiest thing to do, but
Well, I
it,
haven't been specifically in your shoes. So I don't, my kids were older when, and I will say I've got podcast episodes of my son and daughter. Now they were older, but I did like a look back and say, like, how did caregiving impact you? Might find it hopeful that they've gained a lot of really cool things out of watching my husband and I, do the care seasons together.
Mhm.
And so I think we'll look back and be like, of course Ty is doing this someday because he's
Yeah.
seen this happen in his world. Well, caregiving also, you lost your job, right? I mean, or did you choose to walk from your job? I'm not sure which is, but tell me about the job
Confusing.
situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was with my company for about 7 years. The designer ran their website, did everything for them, and then May 15th and COVID, people were working from home already, so just a weird time, right? And so working from home, wife had her stroke. They were great in the beginning. Very, very flexible. I needed to be here or do this or do that. I took the family leave or whatever it was of I don't even remember how much it was, but it took that, and then it just started to slowly get, the writing was on the wall that like they're going to expect me to be like, oh, everything's back to normal, uh, like a hip replacement. I'll be back in a month, or 2 months. I'll be back to normal, and that's just not the case. Your life has changed forever, right? And obviously, we're just talking about my attention. Where did my attention need to go? And my attention needed to go towards them, obviously, and they were looking for somebody who can apply more time, and I can't fault them for that. If I were to go back, I recommend to anybody going through this, maybe sit down with your employer. I don't know how, it depends on how flexible they are, but come up with some sort of game plan, like give me a certain amount of time, to see if this works. If it doesn't work, let me find something else without just give me the boot, because that's, not a good situation to be in. So
No, you're in and I think,
yeah,
I don't know if there were options like working part-time, or could they have paid for some home care so that you had some focused work hours,
yeah.
or
So it was a freelance contract. It went from
okay.
full-time employment to freelance to, okay, this isn't going to work out. It was, I'll say, it was slowly pushing me out the door. I mean, I maybe took advantage of my situation, and it was a good excuse to give me the boot. And I don't want to talk bad about my
Yeah.
company. They were great through this whole thing. But if I were to go back, I would have cordially said, like, this is not going to work. Okay, I can't juggle this many things. This is ridiculous. I did it for 2 years. I was attending meetings while she's in chemo. Bringing my computer into. It was just impossible. But I did it. I felt like I needed to hold on to my job for the health benefits, if that makes sense. I was like, I need this. I need it. I can't let go of it. I need the health benefits. And if I could go back, I would have cut ties way earlier and not need that stress. It was just
A lot.
unneeded stress at the time,
So how are you making it now? Like, if you don't mind me asking, like financially, I know some of your TikTok supporters help give, and social supporters are donating, and that has helped sustain you. And will that continue to sustain you, or like, what are your thoughts there, and how are you alleviating that financial pressure?
Right. Yeah, it's been tough. I mean, as I'm sure as you know, but caregivers do not have a big salary.
No,
I'm
do you
in New
get
York.
paid in New York?
They do not get paid
No.
in New York.
I
So
don't think very like a handful of states pay family caregivers.
her aunt or like my brother, like anybody could be a hired caregiver except a spouse in New York.
Just crazy. Like,
Which,
I know that happens in a
yeah,
lot of places, and it's like, because why? Because we married this person? Like, we
I do
can't
not.
have a
Yeah,
job. I don't get that.
yeah. I feel like they almost like they're like, oh, you're expected to take it. I mean, you know what I mean? You're the husband or wife. Of course, you're going to stay
But
there.
then how are you going to do that and,
Yeah,
go work outside the home? Like, it's like, come on, people. Like,
yeah.
let's, maybe
There's
they'll
got to
watch
be a
this and
better way.
understand. I know. So you have some family support, it sounds like.
So back to the donation. So everybody's donations has got us this far. I mean, it's amazing. In the
I
beginning,
love
everybody
that.
was so generous, and it was unbelievable. So many kind people in the world, and it allowed us to get this far. With um, ordering out and groceries and rehab, and I still get medical bills to this day. It's pretty crazy, but um, updates to the home, which is another whole thing I could get into about how expensive it is to update
To
your
be
home.
accessible for her.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
my house was very tiny to begin with, so like building a ramp when you first come home is like thousands of dollars to rent a ramp. Like these are things that you don't even think of or prepare for. But everyone's donations helped us get this far, and it's been amazing. And social media, you make a little bit here and there from the viral videos, not enough to be, to sustain. I sell stuff on eBay. I just
Okay.
I have to be comfortable with the fact that I'm not gonna make that 80K, 100, 200K a year, and just be happy with that just as long as everybody's happy and healthy, and we could go month to month. So that's all that matters. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. For sure. What um do you lean on your faith, or like what helps you kind of um get some serenity and calm over that? Like, what helps you there?
Ooh, good question. I take my dogs for or my dog. I take my dog for a walk, and then I just been in this entrepreneurial mode, trying to start things randomly, sort of crazy, trying to be sponsored with company. Just like I said, this entrepreneur mode where working from home has been great for me and what I was meant to do and what I was supposed to do. And yeah, I find peace at putting all my time into my family and anything that benefits my family. And
Family first. I love that.
yeah, where I look now and it's like I put a lot of time into my companies and this and that. It's just like I wish I put it into me and my family. I think a lot of people are starting to think that way as well. I
Yeah, the loyalty of like working for a big, company like I saw my dad do for years, that eventually that, he went through a whole thing with the loyalty not being there anymore. And I saw that kind of firsthand in high school. And I thought, oh, well, yeah, the company loyalty is not what it used to be, right? So we do have to kind of protect ourselves from that, I feel.
right.
In this entrepreneurial side, like I'm seeing, you're your graphic design stuff and how it could maybe, marry with the caregiving stuff. Like, what are you thinking about as far as where you could potentially see the dedicated caregiver going? Like, what's your intention with all of this, you think?
Yeah, great question. I think I'm still trying to figure that all out now. A lot of trial and error. It's really tough because I just feel like a old dinosaur trying to figure out all these like tech apps and YouTube and all this stuff. But sorry, I lost my train of thought. Oh.
Yeah, no, I have thrown a lot of spaghetti at the wall, right? Like, so I started Happy Healthy Caregiver in
Oh, right,
2015.
yes. Mhm.
And I was not sure. I knew that I could help people potentially while also helping myself. Like, it felt good to kind of write and process and get those things out, which is similar to what you're doing with TikTok. But it wasn't until years later that I really figured out like how I could potentially monetize the business. And I don't really talk about all of that on the podcast, but I think it's important to share it because for folks like you and maybe other people who are in this struggle situation, there are more companies that are out there that are trying to get their arms around caregiving. And so where I have landed is I do public speaking for employers and different organizations. I'm an educator. I became a certified caregiving consultant. I became a certified senior advisor so I could learn how to educate caregivers at scale. And then the other piece of it is that I see it could be a real potential for you with all your skills, if you want to head that in that direction and don't just want to forget all about caregiving at some point. Once you're a caregiver, you're always a caregiver, though. Right. There are a lot of companies that are coming up with products and solutions, like you said, about trying to reach family caregivers. And, in some ways, we both have this in common is that we have become kind of accidental influencers, I call it, in a caregiving space where you've got a huge following of people that and have built trust with people about being authentic and being genuine. And here are some products and services that maybe could help family caregivers that were in our different situations. And do we find value in those products and services? And if so, pay us to share these things for the content and the digital marketing content that's available on our platforms and through email newsletters and podcasts and things like that. So I definitely think that that's there for caregivers if they want to pursue it. It's not easy. Like, entrepreneurship is a lot. It's a lot, but it can be very rewarding, I think, in the caregiving space. So, I'll be watching you to see what happens next. And of course, supporting you in whatever way I can. And I think for now, while you're figuring it out, if people want to help you, just give you the capacity to kind of even have the mind space to even think about what you want to do next, then we'll send them to your website. We'll put the link on the website where they can choose to donate or give of what they can to help support you and Kanlea and Ty. Is, by the way, on the donation thing, like, I know there's GoFundMe, there's Venmo, there's this or that. Is there like one that you would recommend for caregivers that if they're going to explore getting donations to help them over the humps in life, like, is there a preferred platform?
Good question. I haven't really dove into it too much, but I would suggest, from what I hear, there's like GoFundMe takes a good amount of fees, and a lot of people are like, I don't want to send the fees to that. I want it to go to you. And I think Venmo worked pretty well. I hope that helps. Sorry, GoFundMe, but
I mean,
hopefully they're not your sponsor or anything.
No, they're not a sponsor. No, they're not, but I think it's, we want as much of the money, the funds, to go to the individuals, I think is what you're getting at.
It gets very expensive with this equipment. And like you said, I had companies reach out you're right, they did send us equipment to you. It was awesome. It was fantastic. And a lot of it was helpful.
Yeah, there are rental
the cheesy
companies.
stuff, but
Yeah, there's
yeah.
101 Mobility. I know I had to rent a ramp for my mom when she came to visit one time. I just recently learned in Georgia, like there's a place that does refurbished equipment that then they donate. Like, I don't know if that exists in New York, but maybe somebody listening knows about that stuff and can kind of like, that's the power of the caregiving community, is really uniting to share all of that information, because the experts in caregiving are caregivers. All right, we got to dive in, Matthew, to the I'm going to get your thoughts on a couple prompts in the journal.
Sure.
So let's see what this is from my journal, the Just For You Daily Self-Care Journal. What hobby? Remember those? What hobby do you most enjoy doing?
Oh gosh. I don't want to sound cheesy and do the video game and all that stuff, but recently with Cauli, this is going to sound so cheesy, and I'm going to love it, and my wife's going to laugh probably in the background.
I love
gardening. I took up gardening.
Ah.
It's just been a great hobby to you just see these.
I don't think it's cheesy. I think
I don't know.
It's like nature is very healing for me to get outside.
Yeah.
And dig in the dirt.
She enjoys the heck out of it, and anything that makes her happy makes me happy. So.
And Ty can get in there and get his hands dirty.
Yeah, he loves it. He loves the caterpillar as he's involved. We involve as much as we
perfect. Can. I love that. What's one thing you admire about your family?
Oh gosh. Their strength and just not giving up, I say it all the time. The most powerful thing is a mom fighting to get back to her child. I mean, I've never seen anything more powerful than that. So.
Yes, it's beautiful. Yeah. Let's see. Okay, here's an easy one. What do you order at your local coffee shop?
Oh gosh, iced caramel latte.
Very good. Those are fun. Sometimes that's just a quick and easy, like little self-care thing to do that. Well, Matthew, is there anything else that you're like, we cannot wrap up the show unless I mention this? And also, how do people stay connected with your caregiving story, your life, your situation, and continue to support you? Like, where do they find you?
Sure. So the dedicatedcaregiver.com. You touched upon it earlier with the monetization thing. We're really trying to promote our YouTube channel to get those watch hours up, and a part of
follow on YouTube, Dedicated Caregiver.
Follow us, both of us on YouTube or wherever. Just follow both of us, support us, because I really want to. We've been starting to go out a lot, getting Cauli out there. The weather's nice. She's more mobile, as you can see from our current TikToks. And I want to start filming our experience and showing people out there that don't let a disability keep you at home. You can make it to the botanical gardens where we just went and have an amazing time. So hopefully our videos will be helpful and educational, and wow, we can do that. And exactly what you're doing as well. Just getting our experiences out there in hopes to helping others, right?
I love it. Well, yeah. I'll definitely subscribe when we hang out.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for everything you've shared today. I hope it was cathartic. And I know, no apologies for any of the emotions, because that's real. And that's what I love about watching you and your authenticity and your vulnerability, particularly as a male caregiver, I think is so well needed. There are so many unsung hidden heroes out there, and they need to see themselves when they're looking in social media. And so thank you for being that person.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I really do appreciate that. Thank you so much. And it was great chatting. And
yes. And hugs to the family.
Thank you. You as well.
Thanks for joining us today on the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast on the Whole Care Network. As always, show notes that accompany today's episode can be found on my website, happyhealthycaregiver.com. Just look under the podcast menu for today's episode image, and that will take you to the page with the links and information we spoke about today. You'll also find other resources on the website, along with links to purchase the Just For You Daily Self-Care Journal. When you purchase from my website, you'll get a signed copy, and for a limited time, free shipping.
If you've enjoyed what you heard today, consider subscribing to the show on your podcast platform. It really helps other family caregivers find the podcast, and you'll automatically receive our bi-weekly shows in your podcast listening queue. Maybe while you're subscribing, consider leaving a 5-star rating and review, or just simply talk it up on your social channels. Let's stay connected. I'm on Instagram and Facebook as Happy Healthy Caregiver. And until we meet again, please take care of you.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.